Hey guys, today's story is about a rather explosive ending. So, this story is about a railroad, the rest of the party being turned into pawns, and an explosive finale that results in the DM ending the campaign. To set the stage, I joined this gaming group essentially comprised of family and friends. There was about 5 of us as players, but I'll only list the ones that are important. Myself as a Dragonborn Barbarian, Stabby, who is a Goblin Ranger, the DM, and the Protag, who was a Human Paladin. Now, we've all played D&D before, but only the Protag and myself were what I would call veterans of the game. I hadn't played an in-person game since 2020, so I was very excited to be a part of this one. The game started off normally enough. We all introduced our PCs, and the party got a rhythm going. I'd honestly say that the intro sessions were great. There was lots of roleplay, team bonding, and etc. But it all changed when the Paladin's backstory kicked in, and how he is some chosen one of his holy order. We all didn't think too much of it at first, but over time, his story started to overshadow everyone else's. He was crowned the leader of our troop, had a story beat in all of our backstories, and important enemies who were described as near death 5 rounds ago only went down on his turn. Some were even backstory villains that had nothing to do with him, yet it still seemed like they were catered for him to deal the final blow. Since we were playing in a setting largely comprised of humans as well, Stabby and I were often made to work harder or secluded from RP sessions and meetings with important NPCs. As the story progressed, we even had to pay more for potions and items unless the Protag was with us. Only him, not any of the other players who were also human though. Now, let me explain. I don't mind a setting that has these kinds of social dynamics in them. In fact, I find them interesting. I can understand if there are injustices in a D&D setting, since most DMs do this so that the PCs can make a difference outside of combat scenarios as well. But since we were at the whims of Protag, and he was more focused on his own power creep, we never really got around to it. He would even use this world-building footnote against our characters later when he felt that we were stepping out of line. I tried to just roll with it since I was getting an in-person game. Half of the people there were family, and I didn't want to ruin it by being a mope. I had already kind of checked out due to all the sidelining, but Stabby, who was my cousin, was getting sick of it. She started getting a bit more vocal about the favoritism, and this may have provoked Protag to lean further into his own ego, as he didn't appreciate her criticizing his character arc. It's a bit late, but now that it's here, I should mention that Protag is a friend of the DM, who in turn is a friend of my other cousin. So, before this, half of us didn't really know him. It's my belief that Protag's behavior only began to change after he had become more comfortable with us. Protag got crowned as king of a new nation that he formed. Now, if everyone was a side character before, we were all pawns. Barely any of us got any time to do anything significant outside of roles, as much of the RP was taken by Protag. The rest of the party had already given up on our backstories, which was the most depressing thing about this by far. We were nearing what I would call the end boss of the mid-arc. The party had just dethroned an evil wizard king, and the Protag was doing his Protag screen time interrogations. Most of us were checked out since it had been about 8 minutes of just the DM and Protag talking, when the DM suddenly made the Wizard King try to kill one of the other PCs. This was supposed to be an epic in-game moment, I presume, but it would end up being the catalyst to the campaign's end. One of us tried to counterspell, but no, it was too high of a level, and they failed the roll. So we asked what the spell looked like, and it was described as something along the lines of, "Well, you all know its power word kill. So what do you do?" Now, we're all paying attention. The DM lets us roll initiatives to try and RP our way out of this, like it was slow motion intervention. Stabby ended up rolling the highest, shamed an arrow, and ended up killing the Wizard King. We all started celebrating out of game, because this was the first boss kill that she had gotten since forever. But Protag suddenly marched his paladin up to Stabby and said, "You fool!" Now, we're all shocked. Suddenly, the Wizard King rises as a lich due to some magic stuff, and we all have to run away. Back at Protag's castle, Protag was going off about how we royally screwed up his plan. It is then explained that he and the DM had played a few one-on-one sessions without us, and that Protag had information that the rest of us couldn't have possibly known about. He was also given an amulet that would allow him to imprison the soul of the Wizard King and gain new spells if he had delivered the killing blow. Stabby then said something along the lines of, "Alright, yeah, so what? Big deal. It's not like you need any more power anyways." But that didn't sit well with him because his character was serious and deep, while her character was built off a joke. By now, his anger was starting to bleed into real life, and he and Stabby started getting a bit heated. Stabby, being the mature one, left the conversation in game. The awkward table atmosphere led to the party all leaving the castle to do their own things, leaving Protag and I in his throne room by himself. I thought, hey, maybe I can RP now to progress the story, and maybe get into Protag's head that he should maybe have told us about all these important notes. So I try to speak, but he's having a hard time calming down, and dials it hard into his RP. He calls all of us useless, and keeps on moping about his now missing power-up. I try again to reiterate that, if this was so important, why didn't you tell us? And that's when he attacks me. Yup, he just struck my character, saying something along the lines of, "Well, I'm king and I owe you all nothing." The DM was a bit shocked, but allowed it. I think it's just a one-off, but no. He's taking his annoyance out on me. So, I make my barbarian rage and try to flee, but he uses some magical crap to lock the castle exits. The other players were trying to act now, but Protag said, "Well, you all left. There's no way you know what is going on." I suggested that we end the game here and now, but Protag forced the DM to continue, since he was having fun again. So, I just kept running, locked in his castle as this overpowered chosen one chases me throughout his castle. I briefly thought of just letting him kill me so that I could drop the game, but then I remember something. A few sessions ago, we had stopped a band of pirates from blowing up a port. The Protag had taken all of their gunpowder in order to try to homebrew some new firearms for his army. I ran straight to the cellar and hoped that he would follow me. To play it up, I really went hard on the half HP of my barbarian and said, "I go to the cellar to try and hide." And it wasn't long before the Protag cornered me in the cellar and started to repeat this mantra that he always uses whenever he kills a big bad. I used my turn to activate my Dragonborn's chromatic warding, telling him to back down in character one last time. He used his turn to RP some random on-the-spot reasoning as to why his character is suddenly being so violent against mine, leaning heavily into the homebrew setting's views on the non-human species. Now, at the table, I'm pretty chill about this, so he thinks that it's no big deal that he's going to kill my PC, and he asks me if I'm ready to roll a new character, and even suggest what I should bring into the game to blend in with his kingdom better. His next turn, he attacked me. I'm barely alive at this point due to barbarian rage, but that's all I need. On my next turn, I use my breath weapon attack on the room and light up the cellar full of gunpowder. Now, in the previous session where the Protag had gotten his gunpowder stock, the Protag had ruled that each exploding barrel was equal to one fireball spell, which the DM allowed. Realizing now that all of his barrels were lighting up in his face, he tried to rule that they were more akin to alchemist flames. But with me and the other players having a laugh at the whole experience, we forced the DM to stay true to his previous ruling. The DM nervously looked to the Protag and agreed. And so, the dice began to roll. Now, he collected 50 of these things, which are all base level fireballs essentially. At max, both he and I would be taking a total of 2400 fire damage, and at worst, 400. Even with his magic items that have spell damage, there was no way that he could survive this, especially with us only being level 8. I, on the other hand, being a red dragonborn who had activated my level 5 chromatic warding feature, was outright immune to fire damage. And that was that. He was dead. Burnt to a crisp due to about 1000 or so fire damage. It was of course rolled using a dice app, since none of us had that many d6s. I stepped out of the burning hole like a corny action movie, and the DM promptly ended the session. And for a while, the protag skimmed through his sheet and mine in order to try to find some loopholes, but came out empty-handed. About a week later, the DM messaged our chat and told us that he was ending the game. Apparently, he didn't know what to do now since the protag's character was dead. He had written so much of the plot around him that there just was nothing else that he could think of. I said that we could just retcon the previous session, but he just wanted to end it. So I'm without a real-life party again. But if it wasn't for my family also playing there at the table, I would have left many sessions ago. And honestly, blowing him up was the most fun I had in that game outside of the opening. It was a drag, and none of us had signed up to be a pawn in someone else's power fantasy game. I never talked to the guy again because we never really talked outside of the game in the first place. The chat died, and we all just moved on. I don't know too much about Protag, so I can't in good conscience say that he was a complete ass, but I can say that he was at least a bit too full of himself and is someone I wouldn't want to game with going forwards. Additionally, I see some of you asking about the DM, so here's what I can gather about them. As far as I know, they've been a DM before, but I don't know if I would call them an experienced DM. I think the main issue here was that the DM was a bit of a yes man when it came down to their players. I remember someone asking something like, "So, when is Protag Zoc going to be done?" And he said something like, "Yeah, soon." But it obviously never ended. In the end, I think it was just more of a lack of self-confidence to deny any of the Protag's wants. I do wish them the best though, since the start was promising. They just need to develop a backbone when going up against aggressive players. Well guys, a recurring theme with these stories is, if you're going to DM, actually have the ability to say no and not be afraid of potential conflict. As a DM, you have to balance things out so that everyone has fun, including yourself. And quite obviously, don't cater to one specific player. But yeah, you gotta be able to stick up for yourself. Don't be a doormat. And hey, at least the BBEG died at the end. But that's it for this one. So as always, have a good one.